Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about Treasure Island. The life of a pirate is always romanticized. The truth is, piracy is nothing to be romanticized. Marauding mercenary criminals in boats that appear on the shore of countries with the goal of plunder and exploitation. Many of those pirates were British Freemasons, a group of people that lived by Admiralty law. In Admiralty law, people are both cargo and the vessel, depending on whether you are male or female. The structure of the pirate economy is modeled from the concept of water and its contact with dry land. When a ship made contact with dry land in docks, that is called a berth. Banks, like the banks of a river. Currency and flow, like the movement of water. Vessel, as in a woman that carries a child, her cargo. When you hear sailors referring to a ship in a feminine way, pay attention. The seas are ruled by UCC maritime laws. Each ship that makes port must possess a manifest, a list of valuables and goods. Then you are birthed from your mother's water. You're given a certificate of manifest, a certificate of birth, a certificate that is printed on behalf of the United States Corporation. It is that pirate ethos that continues in modern times through the work of Skull and Bones Societal Group. The group includes politicians, lawyers, military brass, and captains of corporate industry. In fact, the CIA was started by lawyers that understand international law. Uniform Commercial Code is based on Vatican canon law. It's based on Roman canon law. Why is that? Because the Masons that founded this country carry the traditions of Mithras, or Mithraism, which was alive and well and practiced in Rome. The corporations are now considered people by law. Those same corporations seek profits at any cost.
The same thing with the name of the boat. The boat is considered an entity, a person. That's why when you said refer to a boat in a female sense, it's because it's about to give birth. It's about to, whatever it's carrying is about to exude onto the land. It's the same way when you're born. I'm not a big fan of the whole slavery catch-all, but when you were brought over here, you were born again. And that's kind of why these people were treated so poorly when they brought our people over here. They were born into something different. We don't discuss that very often. But it's deep what you're explaining to people is that maritime law and common law ain't the same thing.
These corporations are staffed with true believers in corporate dogma and aloof participants. Understand this. Making choices that seem insignificant lead to unethical business practices.
Look, I don't think people understand the term colonizer. A colonizer is someone who sets up a society or a city or a living situation that completely benefits the colonizer. And we talk about slavery, we get that one. But let's talk about like Puerto Rico, where they can't make any money. Puerto Rico had a population of 5 million people. They only have a population of 1 million because the 4 million had to leave to come to the mainland to make money. They keep implementing laws on Puerto Rico that force them not to be able to make any money, and then they take the proceeds to the mainland. So that's a prime example of this maritime law. Or when a colonizer sets up a situation that doesn't benefit the people that are from there. And all they do is pay. We get tax, we get tariffs. Or a product must touch here twice before it comes to there. It's sick. And they can't survive. And right now they're in debt so badly because they're just in debt to pay the other debt. And you have corporate vultures that come in and, okay, we'll pay off this debt a little bit, but now you got to pay us a higher debt. And you never get out. And Puerto Rico will never get out of debt, period.
And so debt is a form of economic slavery. So one thing people should really consider is that in the book, The Confessions of an Economic Hitman, what he's talking about, the way they go into these countries and the way they basically create the need, the Hegelian dialect, which is another secret society from Europe, the Hegelian dialectic, where problem, action, solution. They create the problem and then they step in and say, all right, here we're going to come in and help with the solution and this action that helps to bring about the solution. So they do that over and over and over and over.
Sometimes we don't recognize a problem as something they created, like war.
The reason why I brought this up is because USAID is the NGO formation or modus operandi that he's discussing in the book. He's talking about USAID in this book.
What year did this book come out? I'm just asking, like 08 or something, or?
No, that book actually came out in the early 2000s, so it's earlier than that.
That's even worse. So that means that USAID has been something that's ingrained into our society, and we think it's a good thing, where they're literally creating these situations where you need us to get you out the problem that we created.
The book Confessions of an Economic Hitman was first published in 2004 and is written by John Perkins. Yeah, so 2004, but he's talking about things that go back to the formation of USAID. See, the funny thing is this is something that's been going on for a long time, because when you had the fruit farm wars in Nicaragua and Central America in the earlier part of the last century. So that happened right before the formation of the CIA and the OSS.
Well, I don't know if it was before, but I was going to say, the CIA, there's a term called banana republic. So America needed niacin and they needed potassium. And the best way to get it were bananas. So literally the CIA would sit here and encourage a dictator to take over this little area, this little country, and then we would buy bananas from them. So then the wrong dictator would get in, and we literally would oust the guy, kill him, blackmail, whatever it took to get rid of them, and then you would have a new banana. That's why the term banana republic. That we were literally setting up countries just so we can buy bananas cheaply, so Americans can have bananas, so we can get potassium and niacin. That's literally why we did it. Just so if you didn't benefit America, we didn't want you around. That's crazy.
And so the Banana Wars were a series of conflicts that consisted of military occupation, police action, intervention by the United States in Central America and Caribbean between the end of the Spanish-American War in 1898 and the beginning of what was called the Good Neighbor Policy in 1934, which was anything but a good neighbor.
That's when we got Puerto Rico from Spain, because that's another thing. We went to war with all these different countries. I didn't understand that. We was at war with Spain. Spain couldn't do anything. We took Puerto Rico. We were at war with. It's because since it happened in the Caribbean, you would think you didn't realize we were warring with Spain over in Europe.
This was part of this economic agenda that the U.S. was part of in growing the empire to secure the Panama Canal, which opened in 1941. And the U.S. had recently built the Panama Canal in order to promote global trade and project its naval power. So U.S. companies like United Fruit Company, which is now Chiquita, the banana people, and Standard Fruit Company, now Dole, all had financial stakes in the production of bananas, tobacco, sugarcane, and other commodities throughout the Caribbean and Central America and northern portions of South America. Then the U.S. was also involved in the expansion of making the Kingdom of Hawaii part of the United States around the same time. Major food companies like United Fruit Company was the major exporter of bananas to the U.S. and needed the military's help in protecting its large plantations and railroads from potential threats. You mean people that don't want you there?
No, the natural people, the natives. The potential threats are natives, or the people who actually are from there. Again, Puerto Rico, sugarcane. They were able to sustain themselves off of sugarcane until somebody came in and killed off all the people that own sugarcane, and then put in all these American companies and started just basically, like you said, pirate. This is about piratism. I forgot the guy's name, but it was nothing but piracy. So you're basically taking all these profits, and we're benefiting from sugar, but they are not benefiting from it in their own.
Use the military to do your plunder.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Military came in, wiped out banks and everything. Yeah. So that's you 100%.
No. They did the opposite. They wiped out everything else and then established their banks that were started by Skull and Bones pirate members.
Yeah. Now, they took over the native bank and said, and they seized the assets. When you read the shit, it makes like goddamn. Like, this is some really fucked up shit. Yeah. So, proceed.
Nicaragua was the main center of unrest. So there was Nicaragua and Guatemala were the two countries that were really pushing back. So Nicaragua had a ruler named Jose Santos Zelaya, and Guatemala had a ruler named Manuel Estrada Cabrera. And both were forceful autocratic leaders, and they were actually enemies, so they didn't like each other. So, which is bad, because if they would have got together, they would have been stronger against the U.S.
I remember being a little kid in the 80s and hearing Nicaragua on our news all the time. Don't you remember Nicaragua? The Nicaraguan rebels.
Because they were down there getting that cocaine through from South America.
Well, that was just a byproduct, because they were trying to take care of themselves. That's the only product they had. You destroyed everything else.
The U.S. was using that as a highway.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying. I just remember hearing Nicaragua, like
constantly. As a little kid, you'd be playing in the living room while your parents were watching the news, and you would Nicaragua, the Sandinistas. You would hear all that shit.
Yep.
The rebels, the
82 to
rebels.
83,
And then
yeah.
the A team would come on television, and they're always fighting these dudes in Central America.
Yeah, like, what the hell going on down there? But that's a real thing. We were fucking them over. That's why they were so important to us, to where they made the news. We were taking their assets. We were forcing them to produce fruit for us. And they wanted another Puerto Rico situation where they didn't even benefit from their own hard work, and everything was coming to us in America. Just so, and as an American, since you're benefiting from it, you're guilty of it too. Just keep your mouth shut, kind of thing.
So these two leaders of these two different countries had two different ideologies, and that's why they were at odds with each other. So Cabrera managed to convince the U.S. representatives in Latin America that he was an enlightened progressive by trying to bring Guatemala into the modern age like America. Zelaya was highly against picking favorites with other countries outside of Latin America, especially so Zelaya would preach about how the Americans should involve themselves with Latin American business and have them stick to their own country. Because of this, the American opinion of Zelaya was much lower than that of Manuel Cabrera. So the Americans in Latin America did not like how Zelaya was involved with the economy of Latin America, as well as his way of meddling in other countries' affairs to get what he felt was best. So this guy was a smaller pirate, and these bigger pirates came in and tried to take his shit over. But again, this is all based on pirates. See, people forget these things. They don't think about these things because they're like, this is a corporation and then a company, and this company is working with the United States, which is a corporation, and they're all working together, and it's indivisible with justice for all. I pledge the allegiance and all this bullshit. And this is indoctrination. And you are taught from the beginning that you will be a good citizen and you will be a part of this. I'm like, all that sounds good on the surface. It sounds good on the surface. And then what happens is that you start to see all these atrocities that are committed by these pirates, including the atrocity of kidnapping that brought my own people here. Of course, you're going to be at odds with a lot of this shit. But then you live in this country, and I'm like, all right, this American thing is this constant experiment. And you have to find a way to make this shit work. So the struggle in all this is how to not become a pirate, but still be successful in this world without losing your ideals and your morals and the things that make you a good person.
Sometimes you have to take advantage of the environment. Like you got to grow stuff here. You got to have your animals here. But you can do it without completely alienating the native people, without killing off all the buffaloes. You can. We could have lived off 20-30%. Now you can't even find a bison anywhere. That kind of stuff. Second, something you brought up earlier that I wanted to bring up because I forgot. But so you were talking about USAID. Who keeps talking against USAID? Elon. And so, based on what you're telling me, is that USAID was something that was set up to fuck over other people, right? Now, we know Elon loves fucking over people, but he seems like he's a nice billionaire, whatever the fuck you want to call him. So what he's doing, he's calling out USAID. He wants everybody to look at that and realize how evil it is, all the while that he's still who he is. It's like when a bad guy points out another bad guy. Yeah, I did this, but he did this. And that's what I think it is. He's pointing out how much money USAID gets to do this evil shit worldwide. Even though he benefits from it too, and he's still a douchebag. But yeah, the fact that he's trying to call out USAID, like, hey, how much money they get for this, how much stuff they put out for that, how much stuff they print, and they're doing this. Do you know they're in other countries doing this? So it's just somebody pointing out another misbehavior. And he wants you to be outraged by them, so you're not outraged by what he's doing. I don't know if you agree, but that's how I see it.
Okay, so a little background on this shit so it makes a little sense. And there's a book called The Great Taking, written by David Rogers Webb. Came out recently, came out in June of 2023. And we always give you books to read and sources you can quote from the things that we say, so it's not like we're just saying, oh, this is some shit we just made up or some shit that somebody on TikTok was talking about. No, we don't run that kind of show. But stocks and bonds are owned by a multinational company called the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation of the United States, the DCCC. They hold all the assets that people have in Charles Schwab and 880 entities that are connected to this group, or investment groups was what I'm referring to. And they pull the assets together, and they're used in the 1 quadrillion derivatives market. Euroclear in Europe, the Canadian Securities Depository in Canada, and other investment groups. They're all connected to this. The investment asset of the public common people is used as gambling chips in derivative markets. This is all a pirate mentality. And as I said before, you can look at and dig deep into this by reading the book The Great Taking. In the event of economic distress, all of the assets are pledged as collateral for large banks and financial institutions to use. Euroclear is a Belgium-based financial services company that specializes in the clearing and settlement of securities transactions, as well as the safekeeping and asset servicing of these securities. We're talking about clearing houses. In a bank deposit example, when an economic crisis hits, your bank deposits will be used to bail out the bank. In a traditional setting, when you bought a stock in a company, you would get a stock certificate. In the 1970s, trade volumes increased. Trading with paper certificates became difficult because they sought a lazy solution.
This sounds crazy, but the movie, or actually the book, The Wizard of Oz, is based on that. It wasn't a yellow brick road; it was a silver road, and they talk about the backing of silver. They talk about stocks. They talk, and you don't realize because they're using like allegory, but that whole story was about American, being funded, getting out of war, stuff like that. So, these subjects aren't new. I guess they're about almost 150 to 200 years old, and we just don't realize that we've been doing the same thing. It didn't catch on right away. And and later on, now that we're so not inundated, now that we're so brainwashed that we think this is how it's supposed to be. Yeah. Well, no, not just distracted. They get you in grade school and teach you that you got to put your money in bank. That 2% over 95 years is good. That kind of shit. You become part of the colonizer. Like we colonized the Native Americans that were already here, but we're also colonizing our own people that are in our that we're supposed to be looking out for. Like, hey, we're doing right by you guys. Nope. We're making sure that you paid up towards the top 1%, and that they're making money on you, and that you're a good worker, and you go to work every day, and you do this and that, and you never really get ahead, that kind of thing. But we're trained at an early age in first, second grade that, hey, you put your money in your piggy bank, and then when you get older, you put your money in a piggy bank called, First National, that kind of thing.
The tokenization of assets, such as homes, cars, and art, can be traded for derivative gambling. All of your deposits, stocks, bonds, can be taken at any time and used in a big fish take little fish strong arm scheme. They actually already own them. There is a subsidiary to the DCC. It's called Cedenco, Cedenco, and they legally own 80% of all American stocks and bonds. This exists outside of all bankruptcy courts. The Uniform Commercial Code defines your investment not as a property right, but as an investment claim. It is secondary and subservient to Cedenco. The people that own the DCCC are the same people that own the Federal Reserve Bank of New York or any of the Federal Reserve banks in the United States. These people are referred to as the participants or the member firms. The Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, is a request, and they have no effect on these privately owned corporations. So, William Densner was one of the founding members and worked for USAID, United States Agency for Development, before starting the DCCC. When the governments pledge money to fight wars like Ukraine and Gaza, the money is sent to the World Bank instead of the country it was intended for. When Densner died, the Wall Street Journal ran his obituary and mentioning that he was a CIA operative. He led early clearinghouses for stock trading. Clearinghouses, 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 publisher clearinghouse. You heard this all the time when you were a kid. It's a clearinghouse. It's a clearinghouse. Clearing for what?
I never got
with
the
that
term.
Money?
Yeah, I don't understand clearinghouse, but clearly it sounds like a middleman. I'm gonna give an example. I live in North Omaha, and we're always in need of money to. Hey, we got to rebuild North Omaha. They never give it to the individuals. They give it to some big company. They get like a grant from the federal government. There's a grant for $130 million, and then they disseminate that money to who they like, and then that's how it works. That's the same thing going when my brother just told you. And Roscoe said, yeah, the money goes to the World Bank, and then it's given to. How come you wouldn't just give that money to the Ukraine? Nope. We got to give it to the World Bank, and we want to make sure that that money goes to the people that are building it the way we want it built. And we want certain people in debt and certain people.
There is an agenda. It may be something that's based on the United Nations Agenda 21, or their Agenda 2030, or their Agenda 2050. But you have to understand, these things are plans. These plans are strung out across decades that line up with a century. So clearinghouses. This guy, William Densner, had an obituary that said he was a CIA operative, and he led clearinghouses for stock trading. So the CIA is involved with money. This guy is a banker, and he's CIA. He's probably Skull and Bones. This is pirate shit. This is Treasure Island that I'm telling you about. Densner was appointed by the New York governor, Nelson Rockefeller. Come on, y'all. In the 1960s to run clearinghouses. He had no banking experience. Oh my goodness. When he was given the job. This was done state by state until all the states were under the same UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. How many of these Hollywood movies have you seen about this ne'er-do-well idiot that is the son of some rich guy, and he gets a job, and he's in over his head, and he doesn't know what he's doing, and he meets some beautiful chick who's a secretary, and he falls head over heels in love with her. And then you got this Hollywood love story that's based off of some Rockefeller,
Gillian dialect,
some Rockefeller secret society Skull and Bones kid, and this is now like your favorite movie, romantic movie, and it's all based on pirate shit. I told you that pirate shit gets romanticized. That was the first fucking line of this episode. This was done state by state until all states were under the same UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. It began in the 1990s and was completed by 2004. That same Uniform Commercial Code rules the high seas. It's the code of the pirates. It's the pirate code. How many times have you watched a movie from back in the day to Pirates of the Caribbean where they're talking about the pirate code? That motherfuckers better wake up. A loophole is to get a physical stock certificate. This year will see the end of direct registration, which is owning your own shares of a company and getting rid of physical stock certificates. This is about the concentration of assets and taking everything from the common person to shift people into a debt-based, debt slavery, gig economy where you rent everything.
Well, how about this? What you're saying is real deep. How many times have you seen an old person pass, and then you go through their house, you go through the things, and you find 10 stock certificates, and then when you try to look them up, oh no, those aren't good anymore. They're still good. But what you just described is the fact that we'll no longer need a certificate to actually own a stock. And that's because you're not owning it, but somebody else is holding it for you until you sell it to the next person. And that's how they get you with Ameritrade and these online businesses. They're like, okay, yeah, you own the stock. And I remember when you first bought stuff with Ameritrade, you still got a certificate. It might have took a few months, but you got something in the mail. Now you don't get nothing. It's because all they're doing is they're just scorekeepers. They're keeping track of when you sell it to somebody else, and they sell it to somebody else. But you never actually own it. We actually own it. We have the physical stock. We're just holding it tight for you. And that's the same thing going on with this cryptocurrency thing. You never actually have any tangible assets in this shit. It's on the blockchain. What the fuck? But still, all they're doing is making everything a fiat currency, and then they got somebody holding it for you, and it's called the blockchain. It's holding it for you. Well, it's transparency. Everybody can see it. Yeah, but I kind of like to hold on to my shit. I like to be able to, physically, spend my money or my gold or my whatever my asset is. But they're making you so comfortable without ownership, and that's just a big thing. And again, yeah, that's why I said they indoctrinate you so early. They indoctrinate you in grade school for banks. Then you get to college, and whatever the new thing is, that's what they kind of spoon feed you, and then all of a sudden you're an early adapter of the shit, and then you don't realize that okay, I was bending over the whole time to get fucked, but it was subtle, but I'm getting fucked now because I don't own anything. I don't even own my name. Since somebody can copyright your name, or worse, how many of those football players or those famous actors, somebody had got their name .com, WarrenSapp.com, and then you got to buy it back from them for $10,000. That's the same thing. People are doing ownership on stuff that should belong to you, that is you, and now you don't have a right to it because somebody got to it first.
In
Basically,
September 2005, Larry Ellison agreed to settle a 4-year insider trading lawsuit, according to one of the lawyers suing Ellison. The settlement ended a derivative lawsuit brought against Ellison in March of 2001. The lawsuit charges that Ellison engaged in insider trading by selling almost $900 million in Oracle stock in January 2001, just weeks before the company announced that it would not meet earning expectations for its third fiscal quarter of 2001. Ellison is also known for creating software that allowed U.S. government to spy on its citizens right before September 11th happened months later. Ellison, he's very, very interested in surveillance capitalism, but it doesn't stop there. Larry Ellison, the fifth richest person in the world, is pitching his exciting vision for always on 1984 style AI-powered surveillance fever dream to an audience of investors in 2024. Ellison said police body cameras, car cameras, drones, and other cameras will always be on and streaming to Oracle data centers where AI will constantly be monitoring the feeds. The police would be on their best behavior because we're constantly watching and recording everything that's going on, is what he said. He also says the citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. It's unimpeachable. The cars have cameras on them. The idea is that schools can be made safe with technology, with an armed teacher or even police, is making guns harder to access and has become a cash cow for surveillance tech companies in the age of near constant school shootings. Many schools have begun to implement AI-powered weapon detectors, which are notoriously inaccurate and which have, for example, detected notebooks as weapons and missed actual weapons and led to what one administrator called the least safe day because of mass confusion associated with the scanners. The students are also being monitored in hallways, in the bathroom, on social media, and on their school-issued devices. Man, what a shitty environment. That's a prison. It's unclear that any of this has made schools any safer. Hold on. So a company called Axon pitched the idea of taser-equipped drones that could patrol schools. Are you fucking kidding me? An idea that was quickly shelved after widespread public outrage and its own ethics board resigning over the idea. Yeah, dummy, it's a stupid idea. Public access to body camera footage is also incredibly uneven. Public records laws differ in each state about whether that footage can be obtained by journalists and police accountability organizations. Larry Ellison is promising a situation here where the footage would be held and analyzed not by a public police department, but by Oracle and Oracle AI systems. There you go. Of course. Right. You're the moral authority in this situation, Oracle. I see. No, you're not. We won't listen in unless there's a court order. And that means listening in and has all sorts of implications for who can access this sort of footage and when and under what circumstances.
Okay, what you just said was they wouldn't listen in unless there's a court order. No, they've already gathered the information. They won't release the information unless there's a court order. Do you see the difference? It's literally telling you that, yeah, we're always watching, but we're not always watching the footage. So when something comes up, then we go look at the footage. No, you've been watching the footage the whole time. You've been analyzing it through AI and all this other stuff. That's what they're telling us they're going to do. It's a shame that they try to get this stuff in the schools. But that's my point. When I said that they basically get you indoctrinated early on, so you're not offended by it. You don't think twice. Like, okay, but that's because you're indoctrinated. That's because at a very early age they start saying, hey, well, if we have hall monitors, well, instead of giving that kid that power, let's just have a robot hall monitor. That's even better. That way the kids won't bully each other. What the fuck is going on? But that's what they're doing. They're creating a form of a hall monitor that's AI, and that's a drone, and they actually thought about tasing kids to keep them in line, like they're cattle or some shit. That's fucked up.
And there's all this push right now to build these smaller nuclear reactors to power all of these data centers. They're building more and more data centers, but they don't tell you what the data centers bring to these neighborhoods. They don't contribute anything. All they do is causes the taxes to go up, and the electricity usage in those areas is basically just like sucked up by these data centers, and it affects the electricity usage in those areas. So that's why they think they want to create these nuclear reactors, and that's going to be a good idea, these small nuclear reactors just for these data centers. So then, are these data centers going to be connected to these nuclear reactors? So then what you have is a situation where there's a nuclear reactor with this private military that's protecting it, of course, and the data center. So what you have in this situation is this James Bond level bad guy layer of a nuclear reactor and a data center all in one. Now, all it takes is a matter of time before some billionaire idiot to look at this situation like, there's another way we can exploit this. We can add even more to this. Let's create an airstrip for drones and have them taking off from this place. Oh, so you just created a military base with a nuclear reactor. A private military base. And then on top of that, let's privatize Social Security. All of this is being done by people who are pirates. The name BlackRock comes from this legendary monolith of magnetite that exists somewhere on the earth that is the true magnetic north of the planet, so they say. And this was somehow, quote unquote, discovered by map makers, pirates. And they would write these letters to Rockefeller, another pirate, and tell him about this shit.
Hey, here's what I think people are not aware. What happens when private companies, like I'm not a big fan of government, but the government, when it has a nuclear reactor, it does things to make sure that people don't get hurt. It takes fail safes. But in the past, we talked about this on podcasts almost 2 years ago, when you talk about private companies, stock companies, when they get a hold of nuclear technology. So Roscoe just told you that they literally are thinking about giving these people little nuclear reactors because these these databases, they take so much energy. You know, when you're dealing with a situation like that, it drains the power grid. So back in the day, they had a thing called gas buggy. They had a thing they were called plowshare. So gas buggy and plowshare. Again, if you read the New York Times, I think it's 1986, 1988. So plowshare was when private companies used nuclear bombs to do mining. Gas buggy was when they would use an underground nuclear explosion to release natural gas, and then they would mine the natural gas. So, yeah, this is a real thing. This is in the New York Times. This ain't, Roscoe.
Project Gas Buggy. On December 10th, 1967, a 29 kiloton bomb was exploded almost a mile underground near Dulce, New Mexico, which knocked observers off their feet 2 miles away. The gas buggy blast created an underground cavern approximately 160 feet deep in a diameter of by 333 feet tall. Imagine putting an oversized football field on a stick like a popsicle, pushing that 3,800 feet down into solid rock and twirling it. A few seconds after the explosion, the molten glass-lined cavern collapsed, creating a chimney filled with rubble and debris. Geologists later estimated that fractures extended out from the cavern a few hundred feet in all directions. Gas buggy, along with Rulison and Rio Blanco gas stimulation events, were the subject of a 1973 investigative piece in the New York Times Magazine called Gas Buggy and Catch 85 by Peter Metzger. He used 85 to refer to the radioactive krypton created by the explosion, released in the subsequent flaring of the natural gas. Records indicate Gas Buggy well produced 295 million feet of gas. This was over 5 times as much as well was expected to yield prior to the blast. But where did all the gas go? The Department of Energy discusses flaring and burning gas off during a series of production tests that lasted until 1973. Were all 295 million cubic feet flared off? It appears so. Burning doesn't estimate radioactivity. Burning merely combines elements with oxygen, including radioactive elements. An inert gas like krypton-85 would pass through the fire unchanged, most likely ending up in the upper atmosphere. Tritium would also combine with oxygen to make triated or radioactive water, which would rain down somewhere downwind from the gas buggy site. Undoubtedly, some of it would enter the food chain.
Okay, so I got to bring it home a little bit. The reason I brought this up is because literally what they found out is that when a privately owned company was using these nuclear warheads and they literally blew up underground, they weren't worried about the groundwater. Usually when the government has an underground nuclear explosion, they take all that into consideration, and they were protecting the groundwater. And once it got in the groundwater, it got into the environment. Once it got in the environment, it got into food. And guess what? That's why the numbers for cancer shot up, was because of that stuff right there. You see, they stopped doing it. But my point, like I said, the point I'm making is that the federal government would do underground nuclear testing all the time, but it always, I don't know about always, but it was known for making sure that it didn't get into the environment in a negative way. Once they gave access to nuclear bombs to these private companies, they didn't take the same due diligence to protect the environment and protect the people. Roscoe broke it down to you that this is a real situation. I just brought up plowshare because I want to say, I need people to understand that a lot of times when these companies take on these things that normally a nation would do, they don't do all the due diligence to make sure that people are protected. They cut corners. They try to save money. That's what's fucking up our economy right now. When you got 3 companies running damn near every business, you got BlackRock, you got State Street, and you got Vanguard, and they're buying up everybody. That means that they're not running the businesses. They're simply using those businesses as cows, and all they want is that business to produce and have a high stock price. But nobody's minding that nobody's taking care of business. That's what's going to happen if you give the ability to these companies to have nuclear weapons or whatever. They're going to half-ass, and it's going to fuck up the environment. And they don't care because guess what? When people get sick and get cancer, well, they run the medical industry too. So I got to come back to you for that too. This is what we're dealing with right here. This is the Hegelian dialect. This is the colonizer mentality. That when you got three companies that run everybody, all they care about is making money. They don't care about making people they benefit or there's no oversight. The only oversight is the damn board of directors of whatever organization we're talking about. That's bullshit.
Artificial intelligence is creating a scammer's playground. So you receive a sketchy call, a text, or email asking for money. It might have been easy to spot, but with deepfakes and artificial intelligence, scams are getting trickier. Scammers use your personal data, often bought legally from data brokers, who sell your phone number, date of birth, social security number, credit history, and much more. The Salt Typhoon hack happened not long ago. The Chinese nation-state actors gained access to phone calls, location data, who people are talking to, and their text messages. The Chinese hackers weaponized the inception points and backdoors that law enforcement uses to access. A national security breach was the result. All this happened through a third-party telecom vendor called Sichuan Juanyi Network Technology Company. It was a massive spy breach. But these things barely get any traction or any coverage in the news. You only hear about it from a tangential way and not really about what's going on. Or if it's even Chinese hackers at all.
Yeah, it's a footnote, and you don't realize that, okay, this is some important shit, because since the news makes it seem like it's a small story, we think it's a small story. You dig what I'm saying? You don't realize this is major.
Right. Yeah. But, these Chinese hackers, they were able to get into 9 of the phone carriers that American citizens are using, including Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Spectrum, Lumen. There's others. But this is stuff that you don't have any control over. So we just sat here and we told you all these different ways that these pirates take advantage of you. Well, you got to fight back. You have to go low when they go high. Right? And I'm not talking morally. I'm talking about technologically. There's a famous line from the movie Body of Lies. It's a Leonardo DiCaprio movie. And it's about where a scene in the movie, one of the actors in the movie is Russell Crowe. And he is a CIA station chief. And he's Leonardo DiCaprio's boss. And he tells him, he doesn't tell Leonardo DiCaprio, but he's talking to other people in the meeting. He says, the problem that we're having is we've been here in Iraq and Afghanistan all these years, and not much progress is happening. These people are going to hate you just from their nature of like who they are and the fact that you're there and you're trying to, get in their mix and stir up their shit, and they don't want you there. The problem is that they're guys from the past and we're guys from the future. And it's really hard for guys from the future to see guys from the past, because guys from the future are looking at them using future technology and expecting them to pop up on their radar using future technology. But these guys go so low tech with their shit that it's hard to find them. So, pirates pirates have ports and ships and vessels and ways to travel and ways to get to you. But if you're not using any of those all the time, then you make yourself harder to exploit. So all I'm talking about is things that make it easier for you to protect yourself.
It makes it hard for them to even register. Look, why do you think they keep giving you free cell phones? They're not free. Cell phone, if you go to buy
data mining operation.
yes. How about this? One I didn't send you yet. The car companies were monitoring people. And they said the worst offender was Nissan. Nissan had genetic information. Nissan had health information, and they don't know how they don't even know how they're gathering information. But what they do know is that these new cars are constantly recording everything you talk about, everything you do, and everywhere you go. And it's not every car company. Mazda wasn't on there. Ford was on there, but once they had a problem because Lexus, they were giving the information to LexisNexis and the other one. And so what they were doing is basically, these people couldn't figure out why their insurance was so high. Do you know why it was so high? Because the car would give the information to LexisNexis would give the information to all the insurance companies. So these insurance companies were seeing that these guys were doing over 105 miles per hour in their car. So that caused their insurance to go up. So I know it's in the newer cars, but not every car did it, not every car company. That's why I said Mazda wasn't on the list. But there were two data mining places that they were literally selling the information to, and LexisNexis was one of them.
Check this out. This is what I suggest everybody have. Own more than one vehicle. Also, one of those vehicles should not be made in the 2000s. This is why. When you have a car that is 90% analog, a bare bones car, you have something that is hard to track. It's hard to track. They have to use ALPRs, automatic license plates readers, and they need people and other shit to find it. If the tracking is not inside the car, then it has to come from outside the car. What I've just said to you is that don't make it easy for them. So if you have a way to take all that tracking shit out of your newer car and use it, rock on. I think that's a service that's waiting to expand. Like if you can have a repair shop that all it does is just ghost cars, dude, that's something right there to really build on.
Yeah, if you could do like a Faraday bag for your vehicle, nigga, I'm down. You know what I'm saying? Like if you could just cover up that little GPS tracker and then take it out the bag, while you drive.
Listen. Just take the GPS out of your car. You don't need GPS in your car. You have it on your phone. Why do you need it in the car and on your phone? You don't. You've been sold that to you by a car dealership. A car dealer salesperson has told you, oh, you got to have it in the car. No, you don't. Matter of fact, here's another thing. Wait, hold on. I gotta say this. You cannot state this enough. If you are traveling around town and you're going to places that you know how to get to, turn the GPS off, you fucking dummy. Turn it off. If you live in your town and you're going to the same grocery store and you're going to the same restaurant and you're going to all these places that you know how to get to, go into your phone settings, turn your location services off. Oh, but they can't be able to find me. Why? Can't you talk? Can't you talk to a person?
As kids, all we had was dimes. Your mom would give you 3 dimes for you to call until it come pick me up.
Oh my goodness.
Nobody knew where you was for that 6 hours. But it was time when you was done bowling, when you was done breakdancing, when you was done playing baseball, you would call your parents with a dime.
Now, you know what that like. You know exactly what that's like as that kid. But when you become a parent, and then you ask, your wife or you ask somebody, hey, where's he at? Where'd he go? Oh, he went to his friend's house. There's this void. And you see in your mind, he's outside playing. He's in the trees. He's in the woods. He's at the corner store.
I'm going to say something that's going to piss people off. That's that single mom shit. Where if you're a single mom, you gotta know where this little nigga is at all times. You gotta know where your fucking kids are at all times. And I'm like, nah. As a dad, you're like, oh, he's at school, he's playing. Okay,
See,
cool.
dads are so different.
Playing could mean anything. When you say your child is playing, that could mean that they're riding their bike 10 miles away. That could mean that they're playing baseball. That could mean they're chasing frogs. That could mean they're fishing. But if you say your kid's playing, like, okay, cool, dad walks off. When a mom's, well, they might be fighting. Somebody might be following. Like, look, if you knew if you saw a white van, you got the fuck out of there. If you cared about your booty hole. You know what I'm saying? Like, they would have van alerts at school. There's somebody in a gray and white van. We saw a gray and white van. Like, shit. We was in second, third grade. We were intercom, nigga. I'm like, am I going to your house? You go to my house. That was it. But look, stop sacrificing your freedom for convenience. That is a continued message that we give on this podcast. Is you're sacrificing your freedom for convenience because I don't want my kid hurt. Nobody wants their kid hurt. Nobody wants their kid missing. Nobody wants, and with the sex trafficking and all that shit going on right now, it's an all-time high. But what I'm simply telling you is that you're building an adult. The reason we call it raising children is because you're elevating a child to adulthood. So you're not raising a kid. That's how this world got fucked up. You got 20 people making adult children. And I don't mean adult children as in you're a nerd or a collector. No, I'm saying that that these people have unresolved issues that weren't resolved as you became an adult. Frederick Douglass says it's easier to raise a strong child than it is to fix a broken man. I'm sorry, I'm using gender, and people get mad. Oh, gender roles, fuck you. What he's saying is that it's much easier to raise somebody to be strong, smart, intelligent, and resourceful than it is to try to fix a motherfucker that got fucked up and broken on the way up. That's what this is all about. Piracy. What my brother's telling you is that these people are using. They try to make pirates seem romantic and they're sleeping together. No, these niggas was raping bitches. There ain't nothing romantic about a pirate. They're either raping bitches or they're raping the society or they're raping the ground or they're raping. They're taking advantage. I guess I gotta say grape now. I can't use the word. Long story short, they're doing negative things just to benefit them, and we don't understand that mentality anymore. Sometimes we don't recognize what is being done to us. I'm going to give an example of black folks. Black folk love to romanticize the civil rights movement, and we love to talk about we made a lot of progress. But the fact of the matter is, nonviolence, when you're dealing with somebody who's violent, doesn't always work. And we sit here and we're like, okay, smart people don't use violence. No, smart people do use violence. You have to use what's necessary to achieve your goal. You have to do what's necessary to protect your people. And sometimes violence is the way. I know that's not what we're taught. I know that we talk about Martin Luther King, but we don't talk about Malcolm nearly enough because Malcolm told you by any means necessary. And by using that statement, what he's stating is that sometimes you got to do things that you would consider bad to protect your people, to protect your future. And sometimes you have to separate. Sometimes and so clearly what I'm saying is that we're things that are bad, we're told are good. Corporate raiders are good. It was big in the 80s where they were all over you. They hit you, they beat you over the head with stock exchange and working for Fortune 500 companies and all that bullshit. When clearly the goal has always been to work for yourself. Now, you might derive some money from these corporate things, but it's only for you to build up your own self, your own empire, your own whatever. But that's not how it was in the 80s. You were supposed to go to college and go work for them motherfucking stock brokers and all this. They're evil. And you're told they're evil, but they would always win at the end of the movie. That's how they brainwash. So unwash your brain, get your brain dirty again. Stop giving up your freedom for convenience and, do what you're supposed to fucking do. And I don't care if it's harder. I don't care if it's difficult. Like, hey, I don't know where my son is all the time. I don't know where my daughter is all the time. But sometimes you got to sneak and watch the motherfuckers. Sometimes you might have to follow your kid to make sure they ain't doing some fucked up shit. Because, hey, my mom pop up at school all the time, scared the shit out of nigga. Fuck. We was in third grade. Miss Kasem's class. My mom was outside there looking at him. One time she said, hey, that little white boy hit you. Don't let that happen again. How'd you know, Mom? Because my mom was watching. She would pop up every once in a while to make sure I was okay. Sometimes that's what you got to do. You got to do the legwork, my nigga. For real. Sorry.
No, I mean that's real shit though. But we talked about kids that go missing.
We're afraid of that. We don't want that to happen. None of us.
In August of 2022, 141 adult victims of human trafficking, 84 minor victims of child sex trafficking, and 37 missing children were found during the 2-week operation.
Yeah, I remember that was a big deal.
That was in Atlanta. In July of 2023, the FBI rescued 200 sex trafficking victims. The FBI also found 59 victims of child sex trafficking and sexual exploitation and located 59 children that were missing during that July operation. Those two are success stories of the FBI doing their job and bringing kids home to their parents, and they are to be commended for that. But there's the children that do go missing and are still missing and are part of these human trafficking slavery rings and groups. And that is piracy. Slavery is piracy. People forget that. You know, the slaves or the enslaved Africans that were brought to Africa and Europe and other parts of the world were taken by pirates, sometimes sold by our own people. But most of the time, it was by pirates who plundered and kidnapped and stole these people. But you got to remember that that is another element of this pirate mode of operation.
This pirate society that was built, it was built like that. It was built to take advantage of somebody else. You're just not supposed to participate in that shit, though. You're supposed to recognize, like, oh, hell, this is fucked up. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't benefit from this. This ain't a good idea. This ain't what God would want me to do, that kind of shit.
But you have to remind people of this because, as I said, people romanticize all this shit about piracy until you start talking about the Uniform Commercial Code, which is the code of the pirates. And if you see that UCC, it's piracy. Everybody wants to make excuses, for abusive situations, and everybody's like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to crash the system and start from? I'm not saying all that. I'm telling you how to be aware of this stuff.
Recognize the true meaning of the situation so you can either protect yourself, avoid the shit, or cure your family of it altogether. And then you start curing everybody else. Like, hey, we don't need this. This is not a necessity. We don't need USAID. We don't need Elon either, motherfucker.
We don't need no USAID. Hey, pirates, leave these kids alone.
Cut that shit out.
But, as I said, these are a lot of things for you to consider. And read that book, The Great Taking, that I mentioned earlier. It will describe how all these things that are related to stocks and bonds and how these things that you think you own are actually owned by these larger entities that are controlling these things. You gave them the money. They're like, nah, you gave us some money, but it ain't really what you think it is. I mean, that sounds like some loan shark type shit. You know what I'm saying? That's really like loan shark type shit.
Yeah, don't give these motherfuckers permission. Don't let them in your house.
That's another thing. Don't give the darkness permission to enter. And people keep doing that. And by listening to certain music and, watching certain types of entertainment and speaking certain ways, you allow that. And people are asleep at the wheel when it comes to the consent, because the consent to these things is actually one of the biggest elements, biggest things that allow that participation. But as I said, there it is. That's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.